Hi everyone, welcome to Blue Heron Hill. I'm Sue in the garden. We just had a little rain shower and I thought, oh darn, I won't be able to video. But it stopped. We had a lot of rain last night. We had maybe about 1/4 of an inch, which is great for the garden. And actually it's great because on this video, that's what I want to talk about, is watering your garden. I want to give you a few tips and I want to give you a few instances where you may make mistakes in watering your garden and to try and avoid those. So let's get into it. Okay, the first one is how do you tell when you need to water your garden? An old gardener's trick is using your finger and pushing it down to about the second knuckle and see if you feel moisture. If you don't, then definitely your garden needs watering. And if you do feel a little moisture, perhaps it doesn't need, and you can push it off for a day. But in a lot of climates, we depend upon the sky and what is going to fall from the sky to give moisture for our growing plants. And if we don't get that regularly, and we don't up here get that regularly, so I have to keep an eye on the plants and an eye on the soil to see exactly when is the best time to give it some water. Now I do have a drip irrigation system in this side of my garden. In my main garden, I haven't set it up yet. I have a water catchment system that I have been using because I got plenty of extra water from a number of different storms that have come through. I haven't set up the drip irrigation over there, and I may not, but we'll see. So there are different conditions of your soil that might indicate that it needs watering. And you did the finger test, and you're kind of unsure. And there's another condition in the soil that exists, and it's called when your soil is hydrophobic. That has that word phobia in it. And it doesn't mean that your soil is afraid of the water. It means your soil is not going to take it up. This is an example of hydrophobic soil. You can see as the water runs over the top of the soil and it is not going into the ground. A remedy would be to scratch up the surface of the soil, water, then wait, and then water again. The next tip is watering at the correct time of day. You can water in the morning, you can water in the afternoon, you can water in the evening. I feel that watering in the earlier hours of the morning is optimal. It gets the water time to drench into the soil and down deep, and it gives your plants that boost of moisture that it needs to get through the day, whether the day is going to be very hot or it's going to be just a very normal mid-temperature day. Those plants need that. They've been resting all night long, and now with the sun out and the leaves doing their photosynthesis and the tomatoes developing on the plants and the peppers and everything else, they need that moisture. So giving it to them early in the day is my suggestion. Also, there are other reasons. If you water in midday hot sun, a lot of that water will be taken up and evaporated into your atmosphere and not be able to get down to the roots of the plant. So you're just wasting that natural resource. Now, if you tend to want to water late in the day, this brings about its own set of problems. The water could be still on the plants. The plants will be wet going into the evening. They won't have time to dry off, and thus it may promote a proliferation of bacteria and fungi in earth. might promote a proliferation of bacteria and fungal growth on your plants, which of course, you know, you don't want any of that. Okay, next tip. Are you overwatering or are you underwatering? Well, if you're underwatering, you should know that. If we do our fingertip and poke it down into the soil, you know that that soil is dry. You definitely need to water. Another thing would tell you, the plants themselves are going to tell you if they're being underwatered. In the heat of the day, the leaves will tend to curl on in, and this is a response that the plant has to retain more moisture. Also, they'll droop. You don't ever want them to go that far that they droop and that the leaves curl in. If it happens, go ahead, give them some water immediately. Now, overwatering is another problem too. You don't want your soil so super saturated that the plants are sitting in water. Now, some commercial farmers do grow plants some commercial farmers do grow hydrophonically, which means it's in water and no soil. Well, our plants are not that, our plants aren't growing that way. We started them in soil, they're in soil now. Having them grow in a waterlogged soil prevents rot of the root structure, and also actually it inhibits a lot of the ability for the plant's roots to take up the nutrients that they need. So overwatering, underwatering, keep your eye out on that. The overwatering thing, if you have them in if you have them growing in planters, make sure you have drainage holes in your planters. I have my sweet potatoes in very large planters. I think they're like 35-gallon planters. I have drainage holes in the bottom, and I also have some drainage holes around the sides. I also have drainage holes around the sides, going up probably at about 3 inches or so, to make sure my soil does not stay wet and drains properly for those sweet potatoes. I don't want them rotting in the ground. Next tip, water deeply. Now, okay, this is close to overwatering. Overwatering is usually just relegated to pots and container gardening and stuff like that. But water deeply. You want to encourage your plants to have their roots go way down deep. If you're watering shallowly, just a little bit over the surface so the surface gets wet, and then that just encourages the roots to stay at the top of the soil. And then if you have drought type conditions, that plant isn't going to be able to take up enough moisture because all of that moisture is at the top of your soil. And you want to promote deep down moisture. So water deeply. I've made a little bit of a calculation. A lot of my tomatoes get almost 10 seconds of watering from my garden hose or my water catchment basin hose, which is not pressurized, it's just a natural gravity flow. I give them about 10 seconds each to make sure that water percolates down deep and gets to the deepest root system of those plants. Watering above is another issue. All plants love to have a bath. Get, rinsed off all the dust that happens in the natural occurring environments. But to do this all the time is, number one, it promotes disease by the splashing up of possible disease-borne elements that are in your soil. So, and then it's really a waste of water because the water hits the plants and bounces off and doesn't actually, sometimes when you have a plant with lots of cover on the soil, that water won't get down into the soil where it needs to go for the benefit of the plant. Now the last thing is mulching your plants. I highly recommend mulching your plants. When the season gets towards, its height, most of these plants will shade out the soil and no weeds will be able to grow and be in competition with the moisture that's needed. So mulching is great. Once your plants are nice and watered and they're drinking refreshingly, and you want to cover that soil to prevent any loss of that precious moisture. So you can use things like hay or straw or grass clippings. Make sure that they have not been treated with any kind of an herbicide, or you might be in trouble with your plants. There may be a transfer of those nasty chemicals onto your plants and you may lose your harvest. So grass clippings, also dried leaves. Wood chips is another one, kind of controversial. I don't use them in my vegetable garden because I feel they can temporarily tie up the nitrogen that plant needs as they start decomposing, and they will potentially impact the growth of your plant. So I use wood chips in my pathways, and but I don't use them in the garden beds around my plants. I primarily use primarily I use straw. Occasionally you get some weed seeds in the straw, but I find those things pull up so easy. Hay has a lot of weed seeds, so I don't tend to use hay. Grass clippings, we do not treat our lawn in any way, and so I will use those at the beginning of the season, especially when the grass is growing so fast. So there are a few tips and mistakes to avoid when you're watering your garden. If you can't rely on Mother Nature to give your garden all the moisture that it needs, you have to do it yourself, whether it is from an irrigation system that you have installed, or just a regular garden hose, or if you're lucky enough to be able to have a water catchment system. Hopefully, okay, let's see. So there are some tips and mistakes to avoid while watering your garden. Whether you have to water from a hose, if you have a water catchment system, if you're lucky enough to have that, or lucky enough to be able to have an irrigation system set up to water your garden. Those plants need moisture, and it's the gardener's job to figure out when, where, and how watering must be done. So, good luck watering your garden. So, until the next time that we can go digging in the dirt, happy gardening. Bye.